Well, welcome everybody. This is another episode here of Countertop Theology. I'm here with my dad, David Ellis. My name is Josh Ellis. And if you've watched any of the episodes, you can probably tell, Dad, you're not at home right now. Where are you?
I am. Yeah, we're on the road. We're in Beaumont, Texas, on our way to Corpus Christi, Texas. Pastor that hired me in 1988, Mike Faylauer, as pastor in a church in Corpus Christi. And they're having their first conference that they've ever done in 13 years. And they're having Randy Clark, Ben Fitzgerald, and Emmanuel. I can't pronounce his last name. He is from Monterrey, Mexico. And so we're actually meeting good friends of ours, Ray and Bonnie, and pastor at our church that we attend, Eric and Darlene Parton. They will be there a little bit later in the week.
Yeah.
It starts Sunday. So we just wanted to get there early and let's say be rested up because it's going to be Sunday through Wednesday full.
Cool.
So it's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like it's the old charismatic model of we're going to wear you out, fill you up, and then send you home, and then you need 3 weeks to recover.
See, this is the stuff that people don't understand. Like, you talk about
Yeah.
meeting Mike in 1988. I was, for context for everyone, I was born in 1988. So that
Yep.
started when mom was ultra pregnant with me.
Yes.
Early 1988. I was born in February of 88. And so, and when he talks about those meetings, those are the ones that I remember as a kid when guys like Andrew Womack would come in, or a couple other names where it would start Sunday night through Tuesday night, Wednesday night. And depending on the season of my life, I either loved or hated it because I just knew,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
you get out of school, mom's throwing together some type of quick dinner to get you out the door, and you're going to be at the church from 5:30 till 9:30, and those were long
Yes.
days. But
Long days. Yes.
looking back, I look back at them with admiration and love. But I know in the time there was moments where I would try to sneak out of service so I could go shoot hoops out in the parking lot. So
Yeah.
until Sam Milburn, rest in peace, Sam. If you're listening to this, I know Sam's not listening to this. If you're listening to this and know Sam, you'll know what I'm talking about, where he would come out there, and if he would catch me during service shooting around, I would have to write lines or some type of punishment for that. But anyways,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
digress.
It was a
Well,
different day. Yep.
yes, yeah, it was. But I think, with that, the conversation today, we're getting away, not, we're going to come back to talking about the foundational principles, but just some of my thoughts this week as we're recording this. It's February 20th. And Dad, I might even post this one today instead of the other one, but whatever, we'll see.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Lent just started this week. And I think for me, whenever I hear Lent, I typically go towards Catholic, right? The Catholic Church, I know, honors that very strict. I don't know if strictly is the right word, but there's Ash Wednesday, and
Yes.
it's this leading up to the Thursday before the crucifixion. So, right before Good Friday. And it's never been anything I've paid attention to. This year kind of felt this draw towards, all right, like maybe I should look into this a little bit more and honor that and go through that.
Yes.
So, and then just got my mind going on what other things do we not do,
Hmm.
or that we see in the Bible that it's, a lot of times in the charismatic side of things, or, just depending on what
Yeah.
flavor that we come from, that there are things that we're really big on and other things that we're not. I think it's the
Yes.
Seventh Day Adventists. Aren't they the ones that are very strict on with Sabbath?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So just these different things that are throughout the Bible that whether we honor them or not, just kind of having a conversation on, why we do or don't, and just I've got
Yes.
some different things that we'll bring up. So we'll just
Yep.
start out with, why do you and Mom hate Lent?
Oh my gosh, what a way to start. Oh, I thought that was that little fuzzy stuff in your pockets, but
Yeah,
uh,
I'm kidding. He doesn't hate.
yeah,
He just he didn't even
yes.
know what it was.
Well, I've heard the word,
Of
but
course.
honestly, yes. So a quick maybe thumbnail sketch of
I'm totally throwing you in there, but he did not
you
know
are,
to
you
ask
just
that
threw me in
question
the
that way.
deep end and I'm trying to figure out how to swim.
I'm messing
Um,
with you.
but it's like, because my background was I was raised Baptist, and Suzanne, your mom, was raised Methodist. So there's more things that my wife did that were, I'll call, part of the church calendar of events that they did. And they would do in the service as well. The Baptist church, of course, they had their own culture and their own things as well. So, but that's what I was, I'll say, born again into. So April 7th, 1977, what, 2 months from now? No, about a month and a half from now, it will
Yep.
be 49 years that I
Like,
shared with high school friend. Yes, it was, you know too much, make a decision. I thought it was the audible voice of God. It might not have been. It was so loud. It, there was no doubt, number one, who it was.
well,
And
and this
number,
was after that car wreck, right? Right?
yes,
You
yep.
got car. So give a little context on that story.
Okay. On my way to work, I'm on probation. 6 months probation because of absenteeism, but the absenteeism, the catalyst for me missing work was partying. So we would do, friends of mine, we would play cards. We play spades till all times of the morning. We were doing pharmaceuticals. You can figure that. Well, it was speed. I smoked cigarettes and I smoked cannabis, marijuana, muggles,
Yeah.
all the different names that it's been used for. And I was in that lifestyle, so to speak. So when I went in and they were Caterpillar, the union was pretty strong on getting people help that had addictions. So I told them I smoked 6 joints a day. That was a lie. It was more than that. And I
Now,
also did, yeah, go ahead.
well, you're getting on probation for being absent, the absentee, which obviously if you're smoking, a dozen joints a day, there's that. But then it's almost worse that you showed up because if you're if you're showing up smoking that many joints and not much sleep at Caterpillar, you're working heavy machinery, right?
I
So
was, I
you were
was.
so
Yes, very dangerous. At
yeah,
even one, yeah. I
we
even,
can laugh now because it's
yes,
50 years ago.
yep.
Obviously, there's people that might be listening to this that you're in the thick of that, and so I don't mean to laugh at that side of it, but also,
No,
looking
absolutely.
at you and knowing who you are and never seeing that side of you is pretty comical as your son to see, like, oh man, yeah, dad playing spades till all hours in
Yes,
the morning,
yes.
drugs and
And just,
cranes.
well, for our listeners, is when Suzanne and I got married in 1982, part of what we committed to do was live authentically with our kids so they know my background. They know the things that I did with not all the detail,
Yeah,
not every, you don't need all the detail, but I don't want to hide what I was versus who I am now. So I'm a new creature in Christ. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. So I don't mind talking about it because I had to go to, because of that, they asked me if I would do 2 meetings a week. It was at the mental health clinic in Peoria, Illinois. So CAT insurance paid for it. So I had to show up for that. They also asked me to do 2 AA meetings a week. And I met with a counselor from Caterpillar every Thursday. So I had 5 meetings a week that I was committed to for 6 months to keep my job. My dad's encouragement was, David, if you don't like Caterpillar, go get your job and then quit. But if I get fired from Caterpillar in Peoria area,
yep,
working wise, it would really be hard to get a job because the
yeah.
union is pretty strong,
It's hard to
UAW,
get fired there.
and very, very hard to get fired. And you got to be,
A total
I'll say,
knucklehead.
you got to be, I was going to use the word idiot actually, but yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, I went to one AA meeting and I lied because it's anonymous and they don't know if I'm there or not. And I looked in the phone book. So this is how my mind thinks. I've got to be able to cover myself to say this is where I was at, this address, what day it was. So I looked up all that stuff.
Yeah.
And my counselor from Caterpillar was a college grad. And honestly, I don't know that he ever had any I'll say, inexperience with either doing drugs or with that lifestyle. So he may have not believed anything I said, but it was always I checked the box. So
Yep.
I was able, I'd go to work, keep my job. And then it was in that process of going through that probation in this atmosphere of being at the mental health clinic meetings. I'm with all these people. We all smoke like chimneys. And some talked about God, some talked about higher power. So I kept hearing that over and over and over again. So it made me very susceptible to spiritual things that weren't highlighted before. And
Yep.
I was at a place in my life where I was hungrier for truth than I was in continuing to live the way I was. And I wasn't suicidal, so it wasn't that. It was like there's got to be more.
Yep.
And I wasn't married because I didn't trust me in any relationship that I could be honest and authentic in. So lying was one of my staples of life, as I'm doing things. One time I had 1,000 hits of acid, which is a hallucinogenic for those that maybe don't know, in my trunk of my car. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My
Yeah.
mom, when I told her later on, she couldn't believe it. But I definitely had the MO, long hair. My eyes were always red, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
So you're in that season
I
and
am.
you get in a car wreck.
Yes, I get in a car wreck on the way to work, and
Were
I
you high at
hear
the time?
just starting to get high.
Okay.
Yeah, the gentleman I was riding with, he will remain anonymous, was reaching into the glove box to grab a joint. And I asked him, I said, "What did you say after we got hit?"
Okay.
So it's snowy conditions, and I made a turn that I shouldn't have in a 63 VW. They don't spin out because the motor's in the back. So
Okay.
I was parallel, and I was T-boned by like a Home Depot truck, a flatbed that would have sheetrock on it. So I couldn't see the driver of the cab. All I could see was the grill when I got hit.
Wow.
Glass went everywhere. Door got pushed in, hit me in the ribs on my left side, but I didn't get hurt. And I heard, "You know too much, make a decision." And I said to my friend, "Did you say something?" He says, I didn't say anything. It's like, okay, I know who that was. Of course, I put it off. And I always like being a good steward. So I made sure that I smoked all my pot, all my pharmaceuticals were gone. Because I had invested in that, I wanted to make sure I got my money's worth.
Yeah.
And I hope everybody understands that's my sense of humor. I'm tongue in cheek right now. I'm totally kidding,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but at the same time, that was still my
Here's
mindset.
mindset. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was. And then my brother came home from college, started talking to me about the Lord, and I went to work. And he called all of his friends, told my parents. He says, "My brother's gonna," I'm gonna start crying. Um,
Yeah.
he says, "My brother's gonna get saved tonight. Be praying." And it was a setup. I knew on my way to work that day that my life was over as I knew it, that he would be waiting in my bedroom for me to continue this conversation about Jesus and surrender. And so prayed a simple prayer and just invited Jesus into my life. I went to bed thinking I would experience, there was a program called Love American Style back in the
Yeah.
70s. And it would always have bombs bursting in there. It was, 4th of July, fireworks, and that kind of stuff. None of that happened. But what I did experience the next morning when I woke up, I had no fog on my brain. I saw through my eyes so clearly. Everything was like crisp and clean. And I didn't ever use the word holy, but it was crisp and clean. I felt really, really incredibly different and exhilarated. It was like a weight that was on me that I didn't know I was carrying was now off. I did feel that.
Wow.
And then my brother encouraged me to tell people. So I did. Freaked out everybody I knew. I had some money owed to me through some of my pharmaceutical things. And yeah, it was $150. So this is 1977. So that was
Yeah.
a
That's
lot
good.
of money.
That's good change. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I thought, what am I going to do with this? I just got my money back. And I thought, I'm going to buy a Bible, and I want to buy I want to wear something that signifies what has happened on the inside. No, I could not have articulated it that way. I
Yep.
wanted a Christian t-shirt because I'd seen them. I liked some of them. So I went to the Christian bookstore, bought my first leather Bible. It was $40. And I'm looking at the Christian t-shirts and I couldn't decide which one I liked. So I asked the gal, she went to the Methodist church. My parents knew them, and very sweet couple. And I said, "Do you have other T-shirts?" "Well, here's the magazine. I can order from these. Pick
Yep.
one or two, three, whatever." I couldn't make up my mind, and I ordered 23, all of them. Every Christian T-shirt they had in that magazine. I said, "I want one of each." And
Wow.
back then, I was wearing a large.
Okay. Yeah. You're the things you
Oh yeah,
remember.
too much information to you, my okay. Never
Well,
mind.
that's
Moving
just
on.
I feel like for a second there I'm talking to grandpa. This is your dad
It
through and
is, isn't
through.
it?
Just he's
All
telling
the
me a story
detail.
about playing basketball and then he talks about the girl in the front row and their parents' first names and what they did for a living and but he always
Oh
got
yeah.
back. He always got back to the the main point
Amen.
of the
He
story.
did.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, so you got your Bible, your 23 t-shirts large
Yep.
and
And
off and run.
man, I was off and running. I was. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
So,
that was my
yeah,
background
yeah,
there
yeah.
is long hair, rode a Harley, no longer in the drug culture.
Yep.
So I'm looking for a church. I'm looking for, and it was, it was called Lily Chapel. It was in the middle of a farming community in Mackinac, Illinois, which is a little bit outside of Peoria, Illinois. And that's who I ended up going to church with and hanging out.
Now,
Uh,
was that a Baptist church?
no, it was, I honestly, I wouldn't know how to describe it other than we today would call it non-denominational. There was no denominational
Gotcha.
affiliation.
Yep.
And the guy who pastored it just recently graduated to heaven, Guy Fons. He graduated in my high school senior class. So
Okay.
he did cross country and I did basketball. But so we knew each other in that circle
Yep.
of athletics. And
Okay.
so I was off and running. So and honestly, I've never had any background in liturgical church, whether it be Episcopal, Lutheran, Catholic. I did attend a Catholic service, which was a hoot because I didn't know all about all the kneeling. I
Sure.
didn't know about the water on the wall, the up and down. I went to a Christmas Eve service with a girl I was dating who wanted to go. They did communion, of course. I tried to grab the wafer from the priest. I think
Back
he
your
pushed my
hand.
hand down. Yeah, it was that was my experience with the
Yeah.
Catholic Church.
Yeah. But
Since then, I've met some really, really awesome men and women that are involved in all of those groups of people. And I think what's attractive to me is I can get by the the denominational shingle that anybody wears because I don't care. Let's talk about Jesus.
yep.
What has he done? Who is he? Answering that question. The big one is he God? And some people believe it and some people don't. And I just try to tell a story and what he did for us and some things that way. So when we start talking about Lent and some of the different, I'll call them disciplines
Mm-hmm.
of the Orthodox Church, whether it be Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, or Catholic Church, that's orthodoxy to me.
Yep.
I am totally unfamiliar. And so I want to make sure that I'm always walking softly because in my day, there was a gentleman that put out Chick tracts, CHIC, Chick tracts. So they were little pamphlets that told stories. And the individual that put these together honestly hated Catholics. Oh, I mean, everything was against the Catholic Church. So I saw them and was never drawn to him because I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't have told you what.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know anything about Catholics. I played basketball against there was, I think, two different, Catholic schools.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm coming back because I could feel my dad anointing coming
No,
on
no,
me.
no. I'm laughing because I remember my first game ever as a varsity head coach. You were my assistant, and we played Melbourne Central Catholic.
Okay,
And grandma and grandpa were sitting on the front row, and we're on the bench, so we don't hear any of this. But there was a couple plays that grandma didn't like how they went down and thought they were playing dirty. And from just her experiences with the Catholic schools that you played against, she's saying stuff in the crowd that mom has to tell her to, like, hey, like, tone it down a little bit, because she's talking about how dirty Catholic kids play, from her experiences.
Oh my
Catholic
gosh.
schools are always playing so dirty. And
I've
yeah,
never heard this.
oh yeah,
That's
she's saying it pretty loud, I guess. And mom's just, now part of it is grandma's 80, she was 80 something at the time. So sweet old lady can say whatever she wants, I guess. But uh, I think before we
oh
get
my
too
gosh.
derailed here, I think some of what I've learned just really a lot more in the last, 10 to 12 years is, for us, like, the church you pastored at, the church I grew up in, non-denominational.
Right.
And there can be this air of we have it figured out and we've got this thing cornered and we've got it all sorted.
Yes, very much so.
And this non-denominational has become its own denomination of how we think and how we do things.
Hmm.
And what I've really opened up to lately is this thing of, like, there's things that certain groups, whether it's, Catholics, Lutherans, Methodists, Baptists, there are things that you can kind of lean into and say, like, oh, they're really strong on this. Like, with on the Baptist side of it is salvation, and they're on the
Yeah.
evangelism side and leading people to Christ really strong. And then there's other things like gifts of the Spirit that I don't want to cast too wide of a broad brush here, but less involved or caring about that, or some believe it's not even around anymore. So, but with this, it's like, I think of, with Lent, the Catholic Church. Never observed Lent until I'm starting this year on Wednesday, and just fasting some different things. I actually bought a book. I'll put a link when I post this episode to a book that I've recently bought. It was Michael Thompson wrote it, and it's this 40 days leading up to Lent, or 40 days of Lent leading up to Good Friday, and then Holy, what do they call it? Holy, I mean, it's Holy Week, but oh my gosh, this is how uneducated I am on this stuff. But
Me too, because
Resurrection
I've
Sunday. And so, anyways, with that, it's this thing of, the 40 days leading up to it, and kind of walking through what Jesus would have walked through in those times. And so it's really, I'm reading this book and this devotional every day of the different things that are leading up to the crucifixion. And really the heart of it is that you are getting to, preparing your heart leading up to Easter Sunday,
yes, yes.
Resurrection Sunday. And when that's the deal with it, I think, that's awesome. Now, if it becomes a religious dead work, like, all right, I got to go to Ash Wednesday, I'm going to force myself to do these things, and it's just that, this is just what we do, then we need to be asking ourselves the questions. But I just think there's so many things in the charismatic movement, in the non-denominational church, that we aren't paying attention to, because it's just like, oh, it's for freedom he set us free. And so we just kind of float through things, where we're
Yes.
invited into more to say, there's actually some rhythms that God has placed, and there's some strengths that different groups have brought to us. And so, we're talking about Lent a little bit, but I really want to kind of broaden the conversation to be a little bit more than just that, because there's other things, like we talked about the Seventh Day Adventist with the Sabbath,
Yes.
and this, the verse of, the Sabbath, man man wasn't made for Sabbath, but Sabbath for man. And
Yeah.
it's actually laid out for us to enjoy, and it's a rhythm of life that we need to be living. We see it in Genesis, it was part of the law, and then it became so
Yes.
religious, where Jesus was, getting after the Pharisees and saying, you do these things, but your heart, what, I'm not going to heal on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Your sheep falls in a well, you're not going to go get your sheep out of the well because it's Sabbath. Like that's not the heart of it. The heart of it is to rest
Yep.
and enjoy what God's created and enjoy your family, to worship. And so I think with that, just what are some of these things that we aren't doing or that scripture has laid out to say, hey, we can do this. I'm pulling up my list right now and we
Yep.
we can go into this, but there's Sabbath, the tithe, fasting, with pork. There's a lot of studies out there where, scripturally speaking, there's in the New Testament, Peter sees that it is
Yes.
permissible now to eat pork
Yes.
and all these things that were against the law that we couldn't eat. But then my mind goes to, but if they went all this time without eating it, maybe there was a reason
For
uh,
sure. Yes.
that they didn't do it. So, what are some of the things I guess that not maybe the specific topics, but like heart posture and just some of these things as a New Testament believer, and for those that don't, that can be kind of church speak. Like, after Jesus died, he has fulfilled the law, and we're not
Yes.
under that anymore. But what are things that, how do we handle some of these things that we don't necessarily have to do, but should we be doing them?
Right. Yep. I have a myriad of thoughts. My wife Suzanne has been reading or has read a book called Atomic Habits,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all about developing a consistency of what you do and when you do it. And I think it's a God principle that what God said in the earth from Genesis 1 was he created in 6 days, and on the seventh he rested. So he's kind of setting a standard up, which we don't know what it is or why, for several books, so to speak, Genesis, and then we got Exodus, where he's given us the law, which is to keep the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And everybody's going, what is that? So I'm going to go to the thought of there and then and here and now.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the concept. It's a theological book, great book called Grasping God's Word, and they lay out in there. It's in everyday speech, so it's not using a bunch of metaphors and words that we don't know without a dictionary, but it's setting up the principle of there and then. Why is God saying you need to work 6 days but rest on the seventh? Now we can thank Adam for that in one sense, because of we were going to have to work until the ground where before he was still going to have to keep the garden. So there was some element of, I'll say, cooperating with growth to see things flourish and multiply. Now now the ground is going to resist us.
Yeah.
We still need substance or sustenance. We need food. So now God's saying, I want you to do it only in 6 days, which every culture out there was agriculturally based, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. There was no heavy industry.
Yeah.
Didn't have a blacksmith necessarily for quite a while. So taking that principle, you had to work 7 days a week to eat and to live. Now, this God has revealed himself to us, is introducing this thought of you can do this in 6 days, and I'll give you enough supply in that last 6 day to take care of you the next day. And it's like, oh my gosh. So God's showing distinction from my perspective. He's showing that I'm better than the other gods. There were other gods that people would offer food to take care of them, sustenance. They would do all kinds of crazy stuff, up to even sacrificing their children to appease this God, to make him or it like them enough to, keep them
Show
alive
favor
and
and yeah.
yeah, all that stuff. So, and then I'm going to go with the thought of the practical things. So here's the thought is God then introduces, after it's in Exodus, but then it goes into Leviticus and breaks down 7 different major feasts throughout a calendar year, with 3 being them we would know as Passover, Pentecost, and tabernacles or booths, which they would build like lean-tos. When I was in Israel 1996, I was there during that time for the Day of Atonement, hearing the blowing of the shofar when they saw three stars in the sky, first three, and they would blow it. I was in Israel when this took place. The whole city shuts down, basically only emergency services.
Yeah.
You might see a police car or a fire truck, but everybody's walking everywhere. No public transportation, only emergency elevators worked, and that was mostly for the Gentiles that were, and say, visiting the city,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that type of thing. Okay, so there's those three, and then there's others that he added, and he says, I want you to do these on certain months and certain times. Excuse me. All of them are set up to remind you of who he is and how he's provided for you. And what I was after was eventually then he introduces that every 7 years, on the seventh year, I don't want you to do anything. I want you to let the ground take over. So if you had a vineyard, the grapes are no longer trimmed, the vines aren't trimmed, everything runs wild. And agriculturally, we found out that that's healthy.
Yeah.
It
Of course.
actually produces more. And God's promise was, is if you'll do this for me, in honoring me, I will honor you and provide enough harvest in that sixth year to sustain you through the seventh year. Also, this is a purpose of it, is to show a distinction in the world on who are my people.
Yep.
Who are the ones that are claiming to know God, following Yahweh, El Shaddai, or Adonai, all the different names that God
Yep.
has, but all pointing to him. So he goes every seventh year. Now, what the children of Israel did, they didn't do it.
Yeah.
That's why part of the reason, not the only reason, but part of the reason why is God's coming for the 70 years that they didn't give him. So 490 years, the children of Israel did not take a year out of working the ground and doing those things that he said you need to let the ground rest. I'm coming for that. And I'm shutting everything down. You're going to go into captivity and you're losing everything basically. And you'll be in captivity 7 years because I'm getting that seventh year back for all these years that you haven't done. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So we know from Jeremiah and Daniel, some of those guys, and Nehemiah, of course, was part of that journey. Anyway, so I guess I would sum up all of that to say there is a consistency that God's wanting to build into us that becomes automatic
Yep.
with to honor the Sabbath, which in our country has become, or I'll say, not with the Jewish people because they still do Friday night sundown till Saturday night
Sun.
sundown.
Yeah. Sundown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so do the Seventh Day Adventists. That's their, we'll call it their thing, so to speak, that they honor. Great. It's what you said though, is when it becomes something that we do when we've lost sight of what it is, what is it for, and what's it producing in me. And we have a tendency as humans to just do things out of rote. I'm not opposed to doing things out of rote to establish a habit because that's
Yeah.
what does it. But then God, because
Your
he's
heart.
relational, he's wanting to interact with us in a relationship way so that I'm doing it with
It,
purpose.
and so these are the questions I ask myself because we've been trying to, as a family, honor the Sabbath, and we have been doing the Friday night sundown to Saturday night sundown more so because it's just that time that we can all be together. We have a lot more control of our schedule. We're not going to church, and like we go to church on Sunday, but like that's just that time that we can do it where we can have a really nice meal together as a family. We'll
Yes.
play cards and do different games. Last week we were playing Hangman and the kids were making up phrases, and it's gotten to the point now where the kids wake up on Friday morning and they're like, "It's Sabbath." Yeah, like they're pumped up that because it's intentional time with mom, that we don't have any screens, there's no TV, there's no phones, any of that stuff. And we go for walks and all this stuff. So it's great. And as I'm having these conversations with friends though, they're like, "Yeah, I like that, but I don't want to get too religious with it." And I know what they're saying of I don't want to get to this place where it is like what you said is the rote side of it. But then I push back a little bit to say,
Yes. Yeah.
are you you're that's how we've used it as a bailout of, oh, I'm not going to do that. I know that that's what God has suggested, and that's the best rhythm for my life.
Mm,
But I live in the Western culture, and I'd rather have all of my, my baseball games and my, all the activities that we're going to do.
right.
And I'll do what God's asked me to do as long as it fits my schedule, right? Like that's
Yeah. Yes.
like I don't want to get religious with that. That's the pushback on this. Now, for us, as I say that, my kids start basketball next week and we have games on Saturdays. And so Crystal and I are trying to figure out, like, my kids want to play basketball. Saturday mornings are the only way to do it. Like that's the time that they have the games. I'm not going to tell my kids, no, we're not going to do that because but we're going to find another time and another way to honor that. And really, of this place of we are going to shut down and enjoy time with
Mhm.
each other. We're going to read scripture and just that's going to be part of our rhythm because we know that's what's best for us. And honestly, I don't necessarily like, I'm still a little uncomfortable with it. For me, going 30 hours without my phone, like not even looking at it, we talked before on addiction stuff, like you get to like, oh my gosh, like it gets you.
It's like looking at your watch.
Yeah, but I know it's best, right? So,
Yes.
and this I think will be for a whole nother conversation, just to not because I know this will go a whole nother route, but we talk about with tithing. I think that could be, let's talk about that on another episode because it is
Yeah.
a,
We could spend the whole time on
oh
that
gosh, we
easily
can, and we should.
or
I
more.
want to, but I
Yes.
think this is kind of where I'll wrap a bow on it, Dad, because I think as we were talking, this scripture or this chapter is really, I think, the sums it up very well. But with Romans 14, and at the end
Okay.
of Romans
Yeah.
14, the last verse is whatever is not of faith is sin. And before that, the context is this person is not eating certain foods that we know it's permissible now, right? It's they're living under the law and doing this, but their heart is right and they are doing what they're doing and they're doing it unto the Lord.
Yes.
And so for me to come in and tell them don't do that or to cause them to stumble in that when their faith isn't there, don't do that. But to me, it opens up that, like, it's just that piece of whatever we're doing, it is for freedom that he set us free. If I don't do the Lent thing perfectly and I'll have, no, I don't even know what all the rules are on it, but, it's fish on Fridays and some of that stuff. My heart is in this place of, as we lead up to Resurrection Sunday, as we lead up to Easter, I want to be in a place where I'm intentional with seeking Jesus and what it looked like for him leading up to that, you know, and
Amen. Yeah.
just preparing my heart and just seeing through his eyes and having a new perspective on this with the Sabbath stuff. Am I not doing things? Am I not doing the Sabbath because I just don't feel like it and it just doesn't fit my lifestyle, even though I know it's God's best? Or, for us, it's, hey, we want to try to honor this because it's a rhythm we want to put in our kids' lives. And we know it's God's best. And if I screw it up, like, he's not mad at me, but I also know this is God's best. So why wouldn't I live in that?
Right. Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
go after those things. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I
but
think about the verse on everything is in Timothy. Maybe it's First Timothy 4, that all things are cleansed and sanctified by the word of God and prayer. But it finishes it with being thankful.
mhm.
And that's what you were referring to earlier. I just wanted to throw that verse in there. That's where most people get permission to eat the scavengers of the sea and some things that
Yeah,
way. But part of what we had talked about, I'll say off and on for years, is there are some dietary things that we need to pay attention to.
yeah,
And that's where God was coming from in the day and age that they were living in, is all of it was set up to preserve them and I want to say showcase them. They would live longer. They've got a healthy relationship with their God and with their family and with their children. That's Here's a small rabbit trail as a reason. One of the reasons why God picked Abram to become Abraham was it says that he would teach his children after him.
Hmm.
So it was generational, leaving a legacy. We're living a certain way to establish that. So even as your mom and I married 43 years, coming up on 44, everything that we do, even when we travel, a lot of times we look in the community for a church that we could go to.
Yeah.
It's not, we're not looking to get out of going to church. So if
Yeah.
we move, I got to find a church.
Yep.
I've even heard it taught strongly that I don't move for a job. I move because of a church or finding that place that's going to feed me, my family, take care of us, do all the things that we think church is supposed to do, which that's another conversation
Yeah.
as well. But yes, and this is what I hear you saying in the discovery of Lent is bringing a discipline into my life that hasn't been there. And I'm exploring my God in new and fresh ways to honor him and establish a pattern or a consistency at certain times of the year. And you're doing that not just for you and Crystal, but you're doing that for your daughters
Yeah.
to say, this is how we live. And, are we healthy? Not just emotionally,
Yeah.
because even now people are struggling
Sure.
emotionally. Man, they don't know their identity. They don't know where they're going. They don't have a purpose for their destiny. And this is what I was created to do and be, and all the things that go with that. So
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Anything that helps.
Yeah. And I just think as we've seen it in different churches and see it all over the place where there can be this tendency to say, hey, the verse of because of freedom I've been set free, and they just live their lives in a lot of ways chaotically. And if you feel like that, or you get to a place where it's like, hey, I want some of these disciplines, there's a lot of stuff that's been structured and set up both scripturally and like Lent is not written about in the Bible or Advent. It's this leading up to these things where we can prepare our hearts, and there's been a lot of really good stuff put out there to walk you through that, and it can be super helpful to kind of give some a path to walk
Yes.
down on
Yeah.
these things and not feel like you're stuck to them, but really it's this way to honor God and walk this
Yes.
out in the best way that as we can. And we're always going to be figuring things out, but I know because of living it is if we put God in the middle of everything that we're doing and work to honor him, he's going to help us fix all the different stuff. And we don't have
Yes, he is.
don't just throw stuff out because it's like, oh, that's what that group does. It's like, well, no, if
No.
it's honoring the Lord, like they might be onto something. So that's where I'm at with it.
Amen.
So
Yeah, it's
we'll continue. We tease the tithing stuff a little bit. I definitely want to go there because the full teaser here, a lot of people that are listening to this have learned a ton on biblical finances and giving and tithing and all that stuff from you because that's what you talked about a lot at the church.
did.
And I grew up hearing a lot of that, obviously. And so you've said to me before we got on this conversation that your mindset and some things that you've seen have changed a lot over time. And I don't know how much we've talked about that. And so we will definitely be going into that. I think next will
Right.
be our next conversation, and we will get on, we will talk about the resurrection
Action
of
of the
the dead
debts.
and eternal judgment. But you know, we're gonna bob and weave through all of this stuff. So
We
it's
are, yeah. Well, that's what we're known for as, I'll say, non-liturgical type churches, is we feel the freedom to not go to the daily reading, monthly reading, that we actually feel like God's saying something. And when we say that, I'm describing is I sense it in my heart, which is my inner man on the inside, and I kind of feel a push or a nudge in a direction. It's a thought that comes in that wasn't there before, and I need to visit that. So I ask the question, Lord, are you trying to say something to me, and what is it? Because I want to cooperate, because he wants to have a relationship with me as much as I want to have one with him. So yeah, talking about money and some things that way. This book is the most incredible book ever written. That God has revealed himself in the pages of this. Now, I'll
This book
add
being the
this.
Bible, by the way.
Yes, I'm talking about the Bible. Yes. Now, going just as a thought, maybe as we get ready to close here about Lent and those types of things, a lot of, I'll say, things that were done as rote or the liturgical service in and of itself, those were all pictures for people that primarily weren't able to read, weren't taught to read. And so they learned about the Bible and the God that they were serving through these means of establishing disciplines. So, in a culture that's not familiar with Lent leading up to Passover, these steps were laid out. We pick up on that as, I'll say, Protestants with the 1 year Bible program.
Yeah.
We'll do Old Testament, New Testament, and Psalm or Proverb, that type of thing. Just for me, it's the encouragement of find what works for you that
Yes.
keeps you in the book. So
Yep.
the book is daily. Like I have a relationship with my wife daily.
Mhm.
It's not, I don't see her for 3 days, that kind of thing, unless she's at a conference, which
Yeah. Happens sometimes too. But
where
but you're
she's,
still calling each other. There's still communication. Even if she's gone,
yes,
there's going to be some communication.
yes, absolutely. Yep.
And
Because I
it's
want to hear her voice, and I do recognize her voice, and I do that through relationship, and I recognize God's voice too over the
yep,
years and how he speaks to me.
yep,
May be different for you or others that are listening. So it's an awesome journey of God,
yep,
with God.
yeah,
Yeah. So Lent's another way to do that, to connect with him.
yeah. So
And I love it.
yeah, no, and you're right. It is a journey, and those of you listening, thanks for being on this journey with us, and we'll
Amen.
continue to just have these conversations. And this one kind of got sparked on by one of the listeners, a friend of mine up in Boston, Stevie. I'll give you a little shout out here. He was asking me about Lent earlier this week, so Stevie Kid getting the shout out. But yeah, so we'll continue these conversations, and that's what's fun is as we're having them, it kind of leads us into what the next one is. So we'll be talking
Yes.
about tithing, giving here in a little bit, and continuing the conversation on the fundamental principles as we go. So awesome, thanks, Dad. Have fun
You're welcome.
in Tejas, Texas.
Yes.
I think I screwed that up, but anyways, Texas. Trying to say
Yes.
it.
We're in Texas, headed for Corpus Christi.
Cool.
So
So awesome.
here we go. We're going to have a great time. Anyway, love you.
Yeah, I love
All
you
my
too. We'll talk soon.
everybody, God bless.